Oh boy, I can't wait to play the visual novel Purrfect Apawcalypse: Love at First Bite. Let's go! That's Gore. That's Gore of my comfort character. Purrfect Apawcalypse is a trilogy of visual novels developed by indie game dev duo 90% Studios. You want an intro? Here's an intro. Purrfect Apawcalypse is the greatest thing to ever grace mankind. We should be groveling at the feet of whatever cosmic force allowed us to be born in the right place at the right time to experience the greatness of these games. I truly don't think that there's a day that goes by where I don't think about them in at least some capacity. Everything from the art to the writing and the overall presentation just appeals so much to me. So with how much I'm enamored with them, it was really only a matter of time before I started analyzing them, like the nerd I am, and as I thought about them more and more, I came to realize that there's a central theme that ties them all together. In the first game, we assume the role of Olive, a dog trapped in the apocalypse, who's decided to make their predicament so good as to border on the titular. They've decided to focus on trying to find a date, having realized that they're okay with dying. It's a good thing. On the way, they discover that the apocalypse was actually an attack by Black Cat Coco to find the killer of her brother, Angel. And the killer turns out to be one of Olive's potential suitors, Patches. With the help of some friends, and a lot of luck, Olive manages to help the cats track him down, Angel steals Patch's body to stop his reign of terror, and then they all go out for milkshakes. In this game, the water becomes muddied very quickly as to who truly is the villain. Almost everything in the early game points to Coco and Angel. They're the ones that started the apocalypse, they're openly hostile towards the dogs, and I mean, a cats versus dogs narrative is pretty standard across media. However, if you come across Patches on your own or with friends, he almost always gets off on the wrong foot. There's something off about him, something much more insidious than Coco and Angel's brute force attack on Hachiko High. It's more calculated, much more cold and unfeeling. It's evil. Patches is far from being a twist villain, but his role as villain still comes as a shock during a first playthrough. Considering how much the game pits you against the cats, a dog being the true bad guy is unexpected. But this serves to show what true evil looks like. Patches acts purely out of self-interest the entire time. He kills Angel in cold blood, then uses the entire school as a shield against the consequences. He manipulates Olive at every opportunity and turns cold the moment anyone dares to oppose him. And worst of all, his actions spread. The cats, while victims of Patches, also perpetrate his violence. It also continues into the second game, where Patches comes back with a vengeance, having enlisted the help of Ginger, a magical bloodhound who died during the Hachiko High massacre, to be brought back alongside an entire zombie horde of the dead students. Despite the fact that his original actions are what led to the massacre in the first place, Patches' thirst for revenge corrupts the victims into joining his side. Ginger being the most harrowing example, considering Patches uses her for her powers and then discards her when he deems her as no longer useful. Even to the bitter end, Patches tries his best to drag people down with him. Quite literally in the climax of the second game, where he grabs onto Olive while being sent into Inferno, landing them both to be stuck inside Purgatory. So when the group is able to covertly get Olive back, it's no wonder they save him. What? Oh wait, hold on. In the third game, after being cut more slack than he ever deserved, Patches fails to grow. One by one, he kills everyone. And somehow, this is unexpected. I mean, really, they should have seen this coming from a mile away. He hurt people. End of story. He didn't deserve a second chance because people don't just change. I've always been a very solitary person. This was less a choice and more just the natural consequence of what the world had in store for me. Looking back at my younger self, it's almost like seeing a completely different person. And considering I've had people not recognize me, that probably isn't too far off. I was louder then, much more willing to try. And people took advantage of that. And it sucked, but it never really stopped me. At least, not until it came from my own friend group. To spare you the long and drawn-out drama story, essentially some new people came in and changed the dynamic. They made inappropriate jokes, spread rumors about other students, and my original friends loved them, and they hated me. If I went along with them, I went too far. If I refused to humor them, I was ostracized from the group for that day. I tried for so long to hold on, but by the end of the year it wasn't salvageable. As middle school drew to a close, there was no final goodbye, just a silent acknowledgement that I no longer had any friends. Now, I count myself very lucky because I managed to reconnect with an old friend around this time. He introduced me to his friend group where I was able to make new friends, so I wasn't completely alone. But I still felt unsatisfied. Even with my original friends having been corrupted, there was still a core issue that I wasn't addressing, a problem that leaked over into early high school. It all felt completely inauthentic. I felt like I could never really be myself, and I just traded in sex jokes for insult humor with this new group. So I began to believe that there was no way for me to ever have actual friends in my life. And then along came Purrfect Apawcalypse, this silly little visual novel with what I could only describe as the perfect friend group. As you may have been able to tell, I became a little obsessed with the series. Back then, I became obsessed with it to such a degree that I wanted to escape into its world. I began hating my life more than I already had, and I started to realize that, by extension, I may have started hating my friends too in the process. Which is why, after less than a week of discovering the series, I put it away. I couldn't bear to face a life that I so desperately wanted, while feeling like the scum of the earth for all I'd done to fit in. For the better part of 3 years, I left it alone. In fact, it wasn't even until last summer that I got around to playing the third game, which is ironic, considering what the third game, and by extension the entire series, is about. You see, the Purrfect Apawcalypse series isn't just about evil, at least not fully. Because if you peel it back just a little, a new central theme makes itself known. Where am I? Hello? Ugh. Patches! Are you okay? What the... Oh, for dog's sake! The central character for this theme is Patches, and even though it's out of order, I want to start my analysis at the climax of the second game, where Patches drags Olive to Purgatory with him. This scene is the single most important scene when it comes to Patches' character. In it, we get a glimpse at his thought process and why he may have done the things that he did. We're stuck here, all alone, for eternity. But I'm not alone. I have you. Oh, and it's in love with me too now. Huh? I'm not an it. No. You're a disgusting mutt that just shares love with everyone like a wild animal. You're of no use to me unless you live for me and only me. Something that becomes quickly apparent is Patch's warped view of love. He says that he wants someone that's completely devoted to him and him alone. Now, it's easy to write this off as some villainous spiel about wanting to control people, but with the way he criticizes Olive's open love of everyone, it comes across more as him saying he doesn't trust love unless it's absolute. In Patch's position, it would seem advantageous to lean into Olive's love to get his way. In fact, in the first game, he does just that when Olive is alone. However, as soon as they get other friends, and more importantly, when he sees Olive extending the same love towards them, Patches drops any attempt to sway them, despite the fact that it would probably work in at least getting himself out of purgatory. He becomes convinced that, in some way, the love Olive offers is fake. I've always wondered, why did you kill Angel in the first place? It was fun. No, why did you really kill him? Did he betray you? Good guess. He turned his back on me, even when he knew he was the only one I cared about. I mean, I hate him. I hate him, and I've always hated him. Beep. When you ask him about Angel's death, he slips up a bit, admitting that Angel was the only one he cared about. That isn't the kind of thing someone who just wants to control people says. Otherwise, he'd have just moved on to someone else after Angel rejected him. Some part of him liked Angel, and though he went about it in a terrible way, his actions were an attempt to keep Angel in his life. This proves that his controlling nature is a side effect of the much deeper issue of his mistrust of people's love towards him. This is backed up by the notes in Patch's locker we see in the third game. The narration talks about their relationship from Patch's perspective and how, over time, Patches began to hold onto it with a tighter and tighter grip. It even talks about how flippantly Patches thought Angel treated their bond, supposedly seeing it as any other relationship. Through this lens, Patches isn't just a dog hellbent on revenge, but someone who became so paranoid that he ended up letting the very thing he was so scared to lose slip away. You'd kill me if you had the chance, right? Absolutely. But I don't think I've ever hurt you. Ugh, that's what you think. I know what side you're on. You're with everyone else, and I'm everyone's enemy. The only question left is why he felt the need to continue with his villain arc past Angel's death, which is where another major trait becomes apparent: Patch's tendency to create false dichotomies. For those unaware, a false dichotomy is a type of logical fallacy where the speaker simplifies a complex topic into an either-or choice. For example, Patches pits himself against everyone else in this scene, then lumps Olive in with them, despite the fact that the situation is much more than just for or against in this case. Now, I'm aware this might be a bit of a leap, but I feel very strongly that Patches put himself into the role of the villain. With his black and white thinking. Get it? Because he's a Dalmatian. And his insecurity surrounding love, Angel's rejection might have been a sign for him that he wasn't cut out for the good life, and seeing no other option, he turned bad. If he's been rejected by the world time and again, what other role could he occupy but the villain? He clearly has something so wrong with him that he's been left alone already, so it's time he just fills his natural role. And seeing dogs as pests to be exterminated. Don't you find it a little ironic that you're lecturing everyone on this? No, I've changed and I'm trying to make up for everything by any means necessary. Maybe you should do the same. Pfft, or what? You'll kill me? That really screams, I'm a good cat now and I'd never hurt anyone ever again. I wonder what Olive would think if they saw you right now. Face it, you're a murderer like me. That will never change. You sure are getting shocked into silence a lot today, huh? I just want to be a good cat. The third game, then, is him unlearning this warped line of thinking. And I think it starts with his talk with Coco during home ec. Coco lashes out at Patches after he makes a scene, to which he responds by calling her a hypocrite. Coco is the closest mirror to Patches in this series, having slaughtered countless dogs without remorse during the events of the first game. However, what makes her different from him is her ability to grow past her actions, and this is most clearly demonstrated by her saying that she just wants to be a good cat. In fact, this is the line that causes Patches to apologize to her, if the player chooses to. Because Patches sees the world in what roles people occupy, the idea that someone wants to be good throws off his balance. Desire is likely something he hasn't considered for a very long time, at least ever since he became the villain. To want to change means that you aren't just suited for one role, and that your current position isn't the natural state of things. The idea of want is what eventually leads Patches to reckon with his own position. He begins to have honest conversations with the people he's wronged, dropping the pretense that he has to be the bad guy. Of course, it still takes some effort from him to grow in this way, which is why I like that the game still gives the player the choice to have Patches be evil. In fact, it encourages the player to pick the bad choice at almost every opportunity. because it's only through believing that he can be good that Patches finally breaks out of his own role to choose his own path in life, one where he doesn't have to destroy everything out of fear of him losing the people he loves. If you want my honest opinion, I don't think that evil truly exists. There's only people who make bad choices, not some intangible force that makes people suddenly unable to do good. It can be hard to confront the fact that you've made a bad choice. It can be hard to accept someone else's bad choice. But the moment we see someone as completely unable to change is the moment we start seeing them as nothing less than a character in a role. This doesn't mean that you should just let people get away with their choices. In fact, something I like about the series is that very few of the characters actually forgive Patches, instead opting to just be skeptically hopeful that he won't murder anyone. The only one that does truly forgive him is Olive. And while there is a fine line between giving second chances and being a doormat, Olive does still go against Patches when it matters. So Olive giving Patches these second chances to grow isn't them being weak. In fact, it's very strong of them to believe in Patches despite the overwhelming evidence against him, and it's what ultimately allows Patches to start to see that he is worthy of being saved. I just find this reading of Patches' character arc really uplifting. While I didn't go around murdering anyone, in my early life, I feel like I treated a lot of people very badly because I forced myself into a certain role. On one hand, it can feel comforting not to actually have to open up to people. But unless you allow yourself to be fully free of that role, you're inevitably going to end up either hurting yourself or other people, and oftentimes both. Of course, you're free to disagree with me. In fact, I'd love to hear more takes on this in the comments. But that's all I have to say though, so I'll see you next time, and have a good day.